scientific aspects as well as the various details and insights from the scriptures. Earlier speakers spoke on the scriptural aspects, and this talk also falls in that line. Today we are going to talk about the esoteric theory of prana and pranayama, and we'd like to share with the learned audience various nuances that we find across scriptures from various schools of thoughts like Vedanta, Yoga, Tantra, and the lesser known scriptures like the minor Upanishads. So this talk will be done with help of few slides.
Maharaj, we cannot hear you.
Hello.
Okay, is it audible now?
Yes, audible.
Yes, it is audible.
So where do I start? I don't know where I lost connection. Anyway, today, good evening and welcome to all the participants. Today's talk is on the esoteric theory of prana and pranayama. I am Swami Vidyapradananda from the Department of Sports Science and Yoga at RKM. So, as we know, the prefix eso means internal. Esoteric means the matter which is about the internal affairs. So prana and pranayama, as we know that we are aware of certain kind of practices on pranayama and we are aware of certain kind of manifestations of the prana. But what is going on correspondingly inside, that is probably we are less aware of. So today's talk will try to elaborate on those points. That is the esoteric theory. That is what is the internal workings of prana and pranayama. So in the if we want to understand the esoteric theory, let us look at the exoteric. That is what is the contrast of this. So exoteric means exo means what is outside. So what is gross and outside and manifesting and visible, that is the exoteric thing. We know what is exoteric as far as prana and pranayama is concerned. That is the psychophysiological effects of breathing maneuvers and the relation of the brain health with breathing patterns or breathing techniques which are commonly practiced under pranayama. So that is and also the health benefits and other psychophysiological changes. This is all the gamut of the exoteric theory. Now, correspondingly, there is something which is called the esoteric, that is internal, insight. Just as we have the anatomy of our physical body, there is an anatomy of the pranic body. And the flow of prana across the whole body through a very special channel, which is called the nadis. And then the various functions of the parts of the pranas, which call the main pranas and the sub pranas, mukhya prana, upaprana. And there is a mysterious description of the internal fire ritual that is called the prana agni putra yajna. So these kind of information we find is spread across various texts, right from the Vedanta to yoga to minor Upanishads, tantras, and across lesser known scriptures. So in an attempt to put together all these, today we are sharing these slides. So what is prana? Let us start the talk with this very oft-quoted words, saying of Swami Vivekananda. Prana is the infinite, omnipresent, manifesting power of this universe. And out of this prana is evolved everything we call energy. Now, in scientific parlance, we know the world, the physical world is composed of matter and energy. That is the classical way of looking at the physical world. So all these energy component put together is what Swamiji is calling as the prana. And where is it present? It is present everywhere. It is omnipresent. And what is the magnitude of that? It is infinite. And what it does, it manifests, it brings out the forms, the various kind of elements we see around us. That is through the power of the manifestation of prana, we see the gross objects, we see the subtle objects, we experience this universe. So I found a very common, a very corresponding similar scriptural passage which talks about the similar idea. So in the Vijnana Amrita Bhashyam of the Brahma Sutra, which is written by Vijnana Bhikshu, he comments that the prana is the Kriya Shakti of Mahat. Just like intellect is the Nishchaya Shakti, that is the determinative faculty, determinative power is called the intellect. So the active power, the ability to act is the Kriya Shakti, that is the prana. And interestingly, there is in the commentary, he says that between the prana and the intellect, prana is actually born first. Tayor madhye prathamam prana vrittihi utpadyate. So there is a very this is a very interesting parallels of what quotation or what saying of Swami Vivekananda we have on this slide. And this explanation by Vijnana Bhikshu is actually closely parallel with that. So prana is in essence what we understand is the power, is a manifesting power, it's a Kriya Shakti. It is known by its functions, its actions, its effects. Now, that is about the cosmic prana, about the prana which is pervading the whole universe. Where is my prana? Because I am concerned with my own mental, physical health. So where is my prana? So Swamiji is saying the prana which is working in my mind, in this mind and body, is the nearest to us of all the prana in the universe. Suppose imagine we are in an ocean. So an ocean has infinite amount of water. What is that water that concerns me? The wave that I am riding in, the wave or the surrounding water around me, that is my connection with the whole ocean. So the prana that is working in my body and mind is the component of the universal prana that I am connected to and I can probably control. And although it is there in the whole body and mind, where is it most obvious? Swamiji is saying it is most obvious in the motion of the lungs. So that is why we start the pranayam exercise with the breathing maneuvers, the control of the breathing techniques, because that's the most obvious manifestation. If we can do something there, then we can probably reach the other parts of prana in the whole body mind, and we will get to it towards the end of this talk. And he also says that thought, it's a very, very high and fine manifestation of this prana. So we have the prana everywhere, but the obvious is in the breath and the best is in the brain. So breath and brain has a great connection that we will also see. Now, I was very intrigued by the term Prana Vayu. I thought, why prana is tagged with the term Vayu, which is one of the 5 main elements. Well, there are other elements also in the Pancha Mahabhuta, but why then Vayu got tagged with prana? Then I found that this prana and Vayu, these 2 terms are interchangeably used in the Hatha Yoga Pratipika in several verses, many verses. So our yogic texts, they actually take prana and Vayu to be the same thing. Not only that, even Vedantic texts, especially the Bhashya of Sri Shankaracharya, we see that prana is equated to Vayu. In the commentary of Brahma Sutra Pranadhikaranam, he uses this word interchangeably. Prana Shabdo Vayu Vikaramatram. So prana and Vayu he also equates while explaining. And in the famous Taittiriya Upanishad Brahmananda Valli, where the Pancha Atma is described, in the description of Pranamaya Atma, he says that the description goes like this: Anyo Antara Atma Pranamaya. So inside the gross body, that is the Annamaya Atma, inside Anyo Antara Atma is the Pranamaya Atma. And in explaining that, in the commentary, Shankara says that prana vayu, that means prana and vayu is equated. So these are some examples across Vedanta and Yoga where prana and vayu are actually used interchangeably, or both terms are used in to denote the same thing, similar meaning. Now, but why it got tagged like that? I was still not very convinced. So I culled out some more information, and in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Shankaracharya simply says that it is heard so. Sruyate yaha pranaha saha vayu. So there is no sort of explanation, as it were. It is just a statement. It is heard like that. Sruyate yah prana sa vayu sa yesha vayu panchavidaha. And we know that 5 types of vayus are there: prana, apana, vyana, udana, sama. So that's one statement. Then in the Samkhya, it's also the Samkhya tradition, in the Samkhya Pravachana Bhashyam, again Vijnana Bhikshu also comments that why prana is called Vayu. He says that because it moves like Vayu, it moves like air, so that is why. Vayuvat Sancharat Vayavu. Because it is moving like Vayu, so it is flowing like wind, so we can call it as we can interchangeably use prana and vayu. But can we get a better explanation? Can we get some other insight other than accepting these statements? So here Vaisheshikas come to help us. So according to Vaisheshika Darshana, Vayu is a substance. We know that the Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they start with the idea of substance, Dravya and Guna. And the whole world and many things are composed by the Dravya and Guna. So Vayu is also a Dravya. Why? Because it possesses 2 properties, Kriyatva and Gunatva. The ability to act and the having some kind of attribute. So action and attribute are 2 things which make Vayu a substance. And what kind of substance it is eternal. That means it is Nitya. There is a Nityatva. And there are manifold manifestations, various types of manifestations of the Vayu. And how do we understand the existence of Vayu? By the property, the faculty of touch. So touch is a mark of Vayu. Sparsha is the Sparsha denotes that Vayu is present. So having said that, in the Upaskara commentary by Shankara Mishra, there is further explanation of this Vayu. He says there are 2 kinds of Vayu. One is eternal, Nitya, and one is ephemeral, Anitya. The eternal one is atomic, Paramanu. The idea of Paramanu is there in the Vaisheshika Darshana. That means it is unchanged, it is Nitya, unaltered and ever present. But the other kind of Vayu, that is the ephemeral Vayu, is of 4 types. Chaturvidham. Tatra Nitya Paramanu Lakshana. The eternal Vayu is of the property of Paramanu, that is, it is unchanged and eternal. But the other one, Anitya Vayu, Anitya Karya Lakshanaha Nanacha. So why it is Anitya? Because it is Karya Lakshana. It is known by its effect, its actions. And this Karya Lakshana Anitya Vayu is 4 types. Chaturvida, Shariram, Indriyam, Vishaya, Prana. So here comes a mention of directly that the Vayu which is changing, which is modifying, which is active, which expresses itself as various functions, is Anitya Vayu, and Prana is one of that. So I found this explanation to be quite satisfactory and reconciliatory of the terms. How did Vayu got tagged with the word Prana? Maybe there are other, of course, I'm sure there are other scriptures or other passages which elaborate this better or in a different way, but here is something I wanted to share with the learned audience today. Now, in the esoteric theory, we look at the anatomy of the pranic body. Now, where does the prana come from? The famous passage of the Prashnopanishad says, Atmano esho prana jayate. Because the principal Upanishads talk about Brahman, Jiva, and Jagat. So Brahman is the supreme being, which is the source of whole creation. So prana is also born out of Atman or Brahman. That is the idea given in the Prashna Upanishad. Further, in one of the minor Upanishads, which is the Maitri Upanishad, says that Prajapati Brahma is the eulogized name of Hiranyagarbha. So that which is the cosmic Purusha, it enters the body, the human body, Jiva, as Vayu, and divides into 5 pranas. So this is another description we find in the Maitri Upanishad. Sa Prajapati Vayumiva Atmanam Kritva Abhyantaram Pravishat. Takes the form of Vayu and enters the body. So basically, these 2 passages talk about the same thing. But the Samkhyas actually take a different position. Samkhyas say these 5 pranas are nothing but the modification. It's a parinama of ahankara, manas, and buddhi. So the 3 components of antakarana, 3 antakaranas are the mana, buddhi, and ahankara according to Sankhya. And prana is the modification. It does not have any special property, lakshanya, like ahankara, manas, and buddhi, which are the antakarana traya. So samanya karana vritti prana adya vayavaha pancha. This is the karika number 29, which says that these 5 pranas are nothing but the modifications, the expressions of the antakarana, inner instrument, which is composed of ahankara, manas, and buddhi. And the Samkhya karika gives clear indication of the ahankara antakarana, which is avimanatmika, the mind, manas, and the buddhi, which is nishchayatmika. So those properties are clearly defined in the Samkhya, and it is the samanya vritti, means it does not have any specific property as those 3, but it is a modification of those 3. It is another form of these 3. Okay. So this is the source of prana. Now, when it comes to the esoteric theory, that is inside the jiva, what is going on? So where is the prana seated? So prana is seated in the navel region. This is as per one of the minor Upanishads, which is the Chandalya Upanishad. Say, Dehe asmin jiva prana ruro bhavet. So there is a description, a sort of mystic description, that there is a center in the form of oval in the body, and it is in the midst of the navel region. And here there is a chakra with 12 spokes, and in the middle is situated the Jivatman, and where it is situated, it is riding over the prana. So this is the location of prana in the jiva. This is again an esoteric description, a mystic description. And we know that prana is actually has more than one names. That is, there are actually 10 names of the prana, and these names come from their differentiation of function and location, which we will come to it in a bit. So, prana, apana, samana, udana, and jnana are the 5 main pranas, and naga, kurma, prikara, devadatta, and dhananjaya, they are the 5 sub-pranas. Where are they located? They are located everywhere. Different scriptures, different Upanishads, minor and major, and other scriptures define the locations, the region of the activity of these pranas a little bit differently. There are differences. But here is a general picture where we see that the jnana is everywhere, and the prana is basically working in the upper part of the body, in the face, in the respiratory organs, in the heart region, and apana in the lower region. So if we imaginarily divide the body into halves, upper and lower, the upper is dominated by the prana and the lower is dominated by the udana, apana. Sorry. And the jnana, and they are all pervading and these kind of things. So those detailed descriptions are there in various Upanishads and various minor Upanishads and major Upanishads both. But is prana is it only inside the body? No. So in the Shandilya Upanishad, we see it is mentioned that prana extends 12 digits beyond the body also. Dvadasha angula adhiko bhavati. Sarirat prana dvadasha angula adhiko bhavati. That means it also extends beyond the body. So there are psychophysical experiments on the aura, pranic aura, which is like found outside the physical body. So probably that can be related to this scriptural passage. Now, here we will discuss some detailed description and functions of each of the 5 main pranas. So this is the anatomy of the pranic body. Where is the main prana located? It is located in the chest, face, nose, eye, etc., the upper region. And where is it mentioned? It's mentioned in some of the major and minor Upanishads, like the Amrita Bindu Upanishad says it is in the Hridisthana. Hridisthana is the area which is above the navel. And Prashna Upanishad is specifically mentioning Chakshuhu, Shrotra, Mukha, Nasika, Abhyam, Prana. That means the face and the upper part of the body, starting from the chest region. Hridisthana is the active region of the main prana, Mukhya prana. When we say prana, it is Mukhya prana. And what does it do? It causes the main function is the breathing. That is, breathing means both inhalation and exhalation. So all that upward movement is governed by this main prana. And opposite to it, all the lower movements are governed by the apana. So it is located in the lower region of the body, which is lower than the navel. So payu upastha sthanam apana. So all that is lower is the place of the apana. And what does it do? There it moves the gross part of the food downward and causes the evacuation. The process of evacuation is very important in the physical body, because otherwise the body will not sustain. The unnecessary things, if they don't go out, then body will not sustain. So avancha sankramati, that means that which goes downward, that is apana. Apana takes all that is unnecessary in the system and puts it downward. So they are sort of opposite function, that which carries upward and that which carries downward, prana and apana. Now, samana and jnana also has some kind of relationship and semblance. Samana is located at the navel region. So Amrita Bindu and Prashna Upanishad describes this location. Samano nabhi deshe. That means the navel region, center of the body, that is the place of the samana. Or madhya, the middle region. And what it does is assimilation of food and drink. So that means it conducts so when we take food element, then it is actually divided into 2 parts, the essential part and non-essential part, or the subtle part and the gross part. So gross part, the samana gives it to apana, and apana carries it downward through the evacuation process. And the subtle part, that is the useful part, the essence of the food and drink, that samana provides to Vyana. And what does Vyana do? Vyana is actually, it pervades everywhere, the whole body. Where is Vyana located? It is located in every nook and corner of the body. Vyanaha sarveshu changeshu. It is not a single place where there is no Vyana. And how does Vyana reach those places? It reaches there through the various nadis, which are the channels of prana. That means there are 72,000 nadis in the body, as per Yoga Pradipika and Shiva Swarodaya. There are mention of different other numbers. I think Geranda Samhita talks about different number of nadis than 72,000. However, the idea is the number is large, and as those nadis pervade in the body, they get finer and finer. And Vyana is that prana which goes through those fine nerves to each and every part of the body, in every nook and corner. So that food and drink after assimilation, that essential thing, samana, is actually giving to Vyana. So, and then it supports, what does it do? It supports prana and apana. Even when there is no breathing and there is no activity, that Vyana is actually pervading and keeping alive the whole body, whole system of jiva. And samana and Vyana is mentioned to be linked, in the sense that samana is a higher form of Vyana. That is mentioned in the Maitreya Upanishad, that Vyanasya uttaram rupam. So it's a higher form. So it is like this: when the Vyana is pervading the whole system and it is lying silent, moment the jiva takes some input in terms of food and drink and other things, then the action of the Vyana starts in the form of samana, and then it assimilates, it sort of filters out the essential, non-essential, and gives the essential to the Vyana. So it's a form of it's a better functioning of Vyana. So in that sense, it is called the Vyanasya uttaram rupam. And then finally we come to Udana. Udana, where is it located? Udana kantham ashritaha. In the Kantha Desha. So each of these are also connected with the chakras, the plexus. So according to their region of activity, they are also linked to this. The pranas are also linked to the chakras, which we are not going to details here. But what is the function of Udana? Mainly function is the eructation, that is both belching and swallowing. So here it is mentioned like this: Udgirati, Nigirati. So belching is upward movement and swallowing is downward movement. Udgirati, Nigirati, both are done by Udana. So this is a very interesting point, that we usually think Udana is upward movement, but then the downward is also done by Udana, that is specifically mentioned here. And where does Udana Vayu arise? It arises between Samana and Vyana. Esham, that means between Samana and Vyana, antar prasutihi eva udanasya. That means it takes form, it takes shape in between the Samana Vayu and the Vyana Vayu. And previously we saw the Samana and Vyana are also linked. Samana is the higher form of Vyana. So this is how, this is the anatomy. This is as per the scriptural passages that we have quoted here. Here we are portraying the anatomy of the pranic body like this. And there are then 5 upapranas, their sub-pranas, and their functions are mentioned here. The Naga Vayu is responsible for the vomiting action. Kurma is winking of the eyes, that is Unmilan. Prikara is sneezing, Devadatta is yawning, Jimrin, and then Dhananjaya is something which pervades the whole body. So this is also mentioned in this Shiva Swarodaya. Now, how does prana work? So for everything there is a vahana required, a vehicle is required. So the vehicle of prana is the nadi. What is a nadi? The word nadi is actually a feminine word. It is a feminine nominative dual of the original word, which is nada. Nada is also, this synonym of nada is nala. Nala means something, a pipe, hollow stop. And in that pipe, some substance can be carried. So basically, these nadis are the channels or the doorways which lead in and out of the body and can carry substances. Now, when the word nadi we see in Hatha Yoga Pradipika and other scriptures, that time probably the authors did not feel a need of having to mention a different term than for the physical channel and the subtle channel. So the word nadi was mentioned like this. Now, later, with the development of modern science, we have understood the existence of nerves, physical nerves, arteries, and other channels where several things are flown in and out of the body. So those things are also channels. But here, what by nadi, what we will understand is that it is a subtle channel where the pranic energy flows. So chittavaha nadi. Chittavaha nadi means the nadi is the vehicle of the inner instrument. Anaya chittam bahati. Through this, the chittam is the inner instrument, the subtle body that flows. So in the Bhoja Vritti, we find this clearly mentioned that nadi here, in the word nadi that we find in the yogic text and what we use as inquirers of yoga is actually, it means there, it is not the physical nerve, is not the arteries or other physical things, channels, it is the chitta vaha nadi, that is the channel for only the pranic flow. And how many nadis are there? Well, there are differences. It says, the Shiva Swarodaya says that there are 72,000 nadis which sprout in the body, and it starts from the center, which is somewhere in the navel region, and from there 72,000 come out and pervade the whole body. But out of that, only 10 are principal nadis, and out of those 10, 3 are Uttama nadi, that is Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Now let us come to the, having discussed about the idea of the pranic body, the anatomy of that, which is composed of the 5 mukhya prana, the main pranas, and their functions and their relations. Let us look at the idea of pranayama from the esoteric theory point of view. Now, before we go to that, let us again discuss the Swami Vivekananda saying on pranayama. Now, we practice pranayama. We have discussed a lot of things about pranayama. In this webinar, we are going to discuss again. And in the scientific studies, we know that we do certain kind of pranayama and check whether certain benefits are happening or not. Now, as a common man, one can get the impression that pranayama is all about breathing techniques, because various breathing maneuvers are discussed and those are tested for positive effects and all that. Now, Swamiji is saying clearly, pranayama is not breathing. Very clear statement. He's saying that it is not as many things, something about breath. Breath has very little to do with. So this is something we should also be aware of, that it is not breathing, it is told by Swami Vivekananda himself. But what it is, then it is controlling that muscular power which moves the lungs and the motion associated with the breath. Because breath is the effect of the movement of the muscles, the power that behind the movement of the muscles. So it is an effect. So the pranayama is the whole aim of pranayama is controlled prana, the prana in form of energy or the power that moves those muscles which cause the breathing. So aim of pranayama, again he also mentions, as same as Hatha Yoga Pradipika, that the final aim of pranayama is to rouse the coiled up kundalini. That is there. But clearly, the breathing is just a means and not the ends. So this is what we understand from these statements. So again, Hatha Yoga, we see that pranayama cannot be practiced until all impurities are removed from the nadis. Malashuddhim vina prana sangrahane kshamo na bhavati. The Jyotsnaya Tika mentions this clearly, that without the cleansing of these nadis, the real pranayama cannot happen. Now, what is there in the nadis that is considered as mala? Mala Shuddhi. What is that mala? So, in the Jyotsna Pika of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, later it is mentioned that these impurities or mala is nothing but the imbalance of the three doshas, that is Vata, Vitta and Kapha. Clearly, it is mentioned that these three things, which are again we know, are caused by the Pancha Mahabhuta. That means each of these Vata, Pitta and Kapha are nothing but the effect or product of the Pancha Mahabhuta. So that is why in the first step of the pranayama practice is the Nadi Shodhana. That means without having these impurities removed, as it were, the real pranayama cannot happen. So therefore, Nadi Shodhana is prescribed as the first step. Now, what is Swamiji saying about this? He is also saying the same thing. He's saying the first step is to control the motion of the lungs. That is breathing exercise. By this breathing exercise, there will be a rhythmic action in the body. And with the rhythmic breathing, all the molecules in the body will move in the same direction. And when that happens, that motion happens, the motion happens, the body will become as if a battery of will. He says that if all things move in the same direction, there is a flow of electricity. That electricity flows like that. All the particles move in the same direction. So similarly, when the all motions of the body will become rhythmic, then the body is charged. He says the body becomes a gigantic battery. Battery means that which stores charges and full of charge. That is the battery it will become a gigantic battery of will. So this is also we find in the Raja Yoga of Swami Vivekananda. He further goes on that when these first steps, that means the rhythmic breathing, when it is done for a sufficient length of time, that means the whole breathing exercise that we do as a Nadi Shodhana, when it is done for a sufficient length of time, then we will get to control of the finer motions. Through the respiratory center, control the other centers. And the respiratory center is the seat of prana. As we saw in the previous slides, that the mukhya prana is in the hridisthana. That means the respiratory center and in the face and the eyes and the mukhanasika prana. So that part is the first step. That means whole focus is on breathing exercise, which does the cleansing, which does the Nadi Shodhana. Once that is done, then the other centers. We have seen that the other pranas, that means apana, vyana, samana, etc., they are active in other centers. The mukhya prana is active in the respiratory or the hridisthana main center. Others are active in the other centers. So through that, control the other centers. That is Swami Vivekananda's clear prescription. And why it will happen? He says because nerve currents, they go all over the body. We saw that the vyana is, where is it present? It is present everywhere. So, but we do not feel them, because that our awareness, our consciousness is at the gross level or the superficial level. So how, by sufficient long practice, that awareness will be built by taking up and controlling the motion of the lungs. And by doing that for a sufficient long time, we will feel that the nerves which are active, the energy that is active in all over the body. Now, in an attempt to illustrate this, we can use this diagram. So, if you can imaginary split the body, the jiva, into two parts, the upper and the lower. The upper part is the zone of action of the prana, mukhya prana, that is hridisthana, and payupastha is the lower part, the lower region, which is the region of action of the apana. And in Chandogya Upanishad, we find this mentioned that prana apanayoho sandhihi sa vyana. So the vyana is at the junction of this. And we have seen that vyana, the samana is the vyanasya uttaram rupam. That means it is the higher form of samana. So by controlling the respiratory center, by action, by doing the breathing practices on the respiratory center, that is in the form of Nadi Shodhana, for a sufficient long time, we can get to the junction of the prana apana, which is the vyana, and through the vyana, samana and udana, which is also at the junction. So this real pranayama is the control of the prana, and the prana is at the 5 main pranas and the sub pranas. So all these 10 pranas to bring under control, the starting point is the respiratory center. That is the Nadi Shodhana, the primary exercise that is mentioned in the Hatha Yogic text and also in the Raja Yoga of Swami Vivekananda. So that is the great importance of Nadi Shodhana. Now, linking pranayama to health. Here also Swami Vivekananda says very interestingly, how does disease occur? Because we are concerned with the pranayama practice and we want to be benefited, our health should be good by doing the practice of pranayama. So we have to understand how disease occurs due to prana. Sometimes in your own body, the supply of prana gravitates more or less to one part, the balance is disturbed. And when the balance of prana is disturbed, what we call disease is produced. Very clearly he says. How disease is happening? Not because of, this is a very different way of stating. We understand commonly that because of this virus or that bacteria, but in the end he's saying it is because of the disturbance in the flow of prana, the disease is produced. And therefore how it is cured? To supply the prana that is wanting will be curing the disease. That deficiency that is happening because of the flow of prana, if it can be replenished, can be filled with prana, then our diseases are cured. So this is the different way of looking at what is a disease, what is causing a disease, the linkage between prana and disease, and how prana flow can cure the disease. Now there is an interesting corresponding verse in the Charaka Samhita. So probably Swami Vivekananda knew this. So it is interesting to know that how they are similar. Here it is in the Chikitsa Sthanam, it is said that when prana flows properly in the channels, so we have seen the prana has to flow in the nadis of the channels. If it flows properly, Abhyahata gati, that means it does not, is gati is not disturbed. Aparityakta swamarga, the explanation given is aparityakta swamarga. It does not move from, it moves only from the designated channels and does not deviate. Sthanastha iti na vimarga. It does not go to any other channel. Then the flow of prana is even, and then one becomes free from disease and lives for a long time. That means adhikam jived vita rogo samaha satam. So this is the verse we find in the Charaka Samhita, which says that because of the regular flow of prana, one can get disease-free and long life. So how can that be made? So Nadi Shodhana is one of the very important practice which will make this thing happen. That means the flow of prana through the channels, the designated channels, if it can be regulated by practice of Nadi Shodhana. And there is we also know that there is a famous verse in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika which says that pranayama can cure all diseases. Pranayamena yuktena sarva roga kshayo bhavet. Sarva roga is a very emphatically it is stating that all disease can be cured. Now, in an attempt to explain this, how is it possible that pranayama can cure all disease? Let us look at Ayurveda. Ayurveda says that the diseases occur due to the 3 doshas. Now, what are the 3 doshas? We know Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But behind those doshas are the working of the Mahabhutas. Specifically, the mapping is like this. The Vata dosha is due to Vayu and Akasha. Vayu Akasha Tattva together create the Vata dosha. The Pitta dosha is created by the Agni Tattva, and the Kapha dosha is by the Apa and Prithvi Tattva. This mapping is given in the Ayurvedic text. Now, having known this, if the imbalance is created because of the irregularity in these tattvas, these 5 Mahabhutas, they work in our system. Because of the change in that, because of the irregularity in that, the disease manifests. Now, how to regularize it? The prana is present in all the Pancha Mahabhutas. Mahabhutas. So therefore, the flow of prana, if it is made regular, if it is made to flow in a proper way that is distinct by nature, then these imbalance of these five Mahabhutas will be reduced, and as a result, the three doshas will be balanced. Therefore, the health and disease curing will happen. So here in the Sushruta Samhita Sharirasthana chapter, we see that where is prana? Prana is everywhere. Agni, Soma, Vayu, Sattvam, Rajastama, Panchendriyani, Bhutatmiti prana. So prana, these five pranas are there in the whole, in all these bhutas, Mahabhutas, Panchendriyani, everywhere, in all the tattvas. So therefore, the role of pranayama in curing diseases. So in this short talk, we looked at the various elements of the esoteric theory, the anatomy of the pranic body, and the idea of the relation of the various types of pranas and their functions, their workings, five main pranas. Then we also discussed about the pranayama, the real essence of pranayama, like how going above this breathing exercise of nadi shodhana, we can actually control the five main pranas and their workings, which is the real pranayama, and that is also told by Swami Vivekananda. And then finally, in the health perspective, how pranayama can actually really help improve our health and cure diseases, because it will really regularize the imbalance of the three doshas and the imbalance or the disturbance in the Pancha Mahabhutas, that is that makes our physical and psychic body. So this was all about the talk this evening. Thank you for your patient listening. And if there are any questions, so we can discuss.
Pranam Maharaj, I have not a question but a doubt. So in the slide, why prana is called Vayu, according to my understanding, I understand that prana or Vayu are the same type of characteristics, but not purely equal. That, am I right? That means this Vayu is the English word air. This is the same, or this is something another? Maharaj, I can't hear you.
No. Yeah, so Vayu is not the gross air. So by Vayu, the Vayu is the subtle element, one of the Pancha Tanmatra, one of the five gross elements also. But when prana is the word Vayu is tagged with prana, it appears that it is like the physical air, but actually it is not only the physical air, it's called the vital air. That means it has the component of the subtle element of Vayu along with something else. So that's why I mentioned that Shankaracharya mentioned that Sruyate, that it is heard like that, prana and Vayu, they are interchangeably used.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vayu Saha Prana and all that, and Panchadha Prana, that what we discussed in the initial slides.
Yeah, thank you.
But the explanation of the Vaishesikas is more convincing. That means, how do we know that existence of gross Vayu? Actually, it's mentioned that by two motions, one is forward motion, one is backward motion. The sense of touch, very detailed explanation the Vaishesikas give, how the sense of touch is felt by two motions, one is forward and one is reverse. And when the element, the Dravya Vayu, because of the property of that movement, gives the feeling of touch. So in that, one thing is there, the property faculty of action, activity and action. That is why it is called the anitya prana, because the nitya prana is having the property of paramanutva, and the anitya prana is the one which is 4 types, which is known by the actions, cardiolakshana, and one of that is the prana. So that explanation is more satisfactory probably, but compared to just by saying that yes, prana is known as Vayu.
How I under prana is functioning inhalation and exhalation. How I under prana is functioning inhalation and exhalation.
So Upanishads talk about there is a difference of the way the prana functions, difference in the description. So in the Prashna Upanishad, it says Mukha Nasika Abhyam Prano Chakshu Srotra, etc. So the whole upper region that is governed by the action of prana. So the upper region also contains the face and the parts of the face, so we can understand in that spirit.
If a disease like dengue, for example,
just I understand. The eye totally inhalation itself.
Inhalation, exhalation is not with eye, it is the Mukhya Prana. The function of Mukhya Prana, the region of activity of the Mukhya Prana is the upper part from the Hridisthana, which also includes the Mukha, Nasika, Chakshu, etc. And what was the next in that?
if a disease like
No,
dengue,
in that there is another sentence. Right?
No, some says clear, but why all eyes?
Okay. Eye falls in the upper region from the Hridisthana, so it is not excluded. Then?
if a disease like dengue, for example, is initiated, how can pranayama help to cure it?
Okay, so in this discussion of the esoteric theory, one thing is clear that any type of disease, psychophysical, is the result of the imbalance of prana. So whether it is disease X or Y, it is not mentioned like this, but we can have a general understanding that it is the prana which is working to sustain the body. So there is kind of dearth of this effectiveness of prana somewhere it has gone, and which has to be compensated by some kind of effort from the part of the individual. And in that, the several pranayama are prescribed. Is there any other? Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everyone for joining this evening. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. So tomorrow we have a very interesting talk by Dr. A.G. Ramakrishnan, who is the Professor of Electrical Engineering and also Associate Faculty in the Center of Neuroscience in IISc Bangalore. He will talk about cardiorespiratory and endocrine mechanisms behind the effectiveness of pranayama by